Did it happen? It should have happened.
Yes. That's right. That's sweet. I'll just pin it from here. Right.
Yep, thanks. I could invite you just to take a seat. We expected 120, but we're competing with a rare day in Wellington. Thank you so much for coming out to join our conversation, which we decided would be useful to have at leisure rather than in the noise of a crisis. As the director of the GCHQ said, it would be better to start this debate before rather than after acts of violence, partly because we all want to stop those events happening, but also because the worst possible time for decision-making is after an atrocity. And we've seen the pressure of the debate after events like San Bernardino, Declan and the like. And we are not immune. We will face significant challenges as many of our allies and partners in other jurisdictions have faced. And we want to be contributing to that discussion in a really informed way. Encryption is used by terrorists and crooks. It is cracked by spies and police officers, but it's also increasingly used by each of us to protect our communications and to promote our privacy and our commercial interests. There are people here who know a lot more about encryption than I do, so I'm not going to attempt the technical aspects. But from a policy perspective, I guess the one word that you'll hear a lot about today is security. Encryption is really important for promoting the security of personal information. But security is one of those words that has many meanings, and national security is one of them. Security is one of the words in Security Intelligence Service. We have a right to be kept safe and secure in our personal lives, and we have an obligation to protect information which is entrusted to us in a secure sense. So I'm looking forward to a fairly rich discussion. I'll briefly introduce our panel, and then I will invite each of them to speak for 5 minutes on their particular perspective. We don't have a representative of the law enforcement or intelligence community on the panel, but if anybody wants to make a contribution reflecting that kind of perspective from the floor, we'd certainly welcome that when we open up the discussion. So we'll have a 5-minute introduction from each of our panellists, then I'll try and provoke a little bit of discussion, and then we'll open it up for all of us. We are live streaming, so have we got anyone following the live stream, Charles?
23.
23. They could almost, we've got enough seats for them. Invite them over. We're welcoming questions via our Twitter feed, which is @NZPrivacy, and you can use the hashtag #BreakTheCode.
Breaking
the code. If you want to communicate with us, it'll come through here, high tech, and then be scribbled down on a piece of paper and passed to me. So we cover the technological spectrum. One of my favourite quotes from the recent public discourse on this issue came from the Prime Minister of Australia, Malcolm Turnbull, who in discussing strong encryption said, "The laws of mathematics are very commendable, but the only law that applies in Australia is the law of Australia." I don't know how they get on with gravity, but that's another question. I'd like to introduce the panel. My colleague and very respected and important part of the intelligence oversight community is Cheryl Gwyn, the first Inspector General of Intelligence and Security appointed under the which Act? 2013? The 2013 Act. She was appointed for a 3-year term in 2014, and that was extended this year for a further 3-year term. She's previously been a Deputy Solicitor General and litigation partner in a couple of major law firms. We have next to her Declan Ingram, Manager of Operations for CERT NZ. And most of you will be familiar with CERT, a fresh new organisation which is an essential part of our cybersecurity infrastructure to receive and disseminate information about malicious activity online. Next to him, John Wesley-Smith from Spark, who is in charge of regulatory affairs, also a lawyer. I hope John will be able to talk to us a little bit about how the interface works at a practical level for a commercial entity. One of the reasons I think that we haven't had quite such an acute public debate about encryption is the Telecommunications Interception Capability Security Act, which requires any network to cooperate with intelligence and security services and to decrypt any encryption which they offer. So the idea of a backdoor or a key is out there already. But that idea is increasingly becoming unsatisfactory from a law enforcement perspective, or perhaps obsolete, as the technology of encryption becomes more democratized. We now have offerings in the marketplace that are not subject to the TIXA, messaging apps that we can all download on our phones and secure our communications at rest or in transmission. So looking forward to hearing from John. Thomas Beagle will be well known to many of you as a spokesperson for civil society, as the chairperson of the New Zealand Council for Civil Liberties and co-founder of the group Tech Liberty. Thomas gives voice to an important set of interests, and I really appreciate his role because it helps me to look moderate. Many of you will remember the exchange between Thomas and the Prime Minister in a select committee, and you've got to admire somebody who's able in a public forum like that, in an unfamiliar forum, to take a really principled stand, even though it may not be popular. Next to him we have Dr. Ryan Coe, who's travelled all the way from Waikato to join us today, and Ryan leads the cybersecurity researchers of Waikato with a really sexy acronym of CROW. He'll introduce some of the work that he's been doing, but he consults to a number of law enforcement agencies domestically and internationally. There we had Ian Welch, also an academic from the School of Engineering and Computer Sciences at Victoria. His research has included the application of artificial intelligence to malware detection, intrusion tolerance, policy languages, security protocol design and analysis, as well as understanding the relationship between cognitive biases and security behaviour. So that's going to leave us very well informed or much confused, I'm sure. Ben Creet is our last in the line, but I'm going to invite to speak first. Ben is a policy analyst, technology geek and cybersecurity professional who works at Internet New Zealand. Now, Internet New Zealand has produced a couple of excellent publications as kind of backgrounders. We have these that you can download from their site: Encryption, what it is and why it's important, and Encryption, ways forward that protect the Internet's potential. So there's a policy paper where Internet New Zealand drives its stake into the ground and declares where it thinks I hesitate to use the word balance. Some of you might know my aversion to the kind of false dichotomy of one or the other, but I think that's how it's framed in the Internet New Zealand policy. Ben, I'm going to give you the first 5 minutes to introduce yourself and perhaps to give us the 101. Now, I'm sorry, panellists, I'm going to be a merciless chair, having neglected my duties at a session in Melbourne the other day, and as a result of running ridiculously over time. I will ask you to stick to your 5 minutes after I've just taken up 12 introducing you. Sorry about that. Okay. Ben, thanks.
Thank you, John. So I just wanted to first of all cover off encryption in New Zealand. So, where are we as a country? So 1 in 5 New Zealanders